This is episode 14 of the Oilers Live podcast. I had as my guest tonight Ken from Sinbin.Vegas. He and I did 3 segments tonight and unfortunately lost the third segment. But you've got 2 great segments with a really knowledgeable guy in Ken and Sinbin.Vegas. What a great episode. Hope you listen and enjoy.
Oilers Live podcast.
Welcome to Oilers Live podcast. I've got with me as my guest tonight, Ken Bulkey from Sinbin.Vegas. Thanks for joining me tonight.
You got it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great. We talked a little bit just before we got to start recording today about Vegas and the site Sinbin.Vegas. I'm quite interested and quite excited about talking to you tonight. I want to know what it's like. I've read a little bit about your history and understand you weren't a hockey fan before you started the site. Take me back to pre-August. I think it was August 25th of 2015, your first posting. Take me back. What was going through your mind at that point and starting the site?
So way back in the doldrums of there being no hockey here, there was a time when there was going to be either a soccer stadium or we were going to get the NHL. And as things went on, I had always been a soccer fan. I was always interested in soccer, but I was like, you know what? I think hockey seems a little bit more likely. Soccer wound up falling flat on its face because one of the councilmen in town realized that the stadium situation was a complete sham, and that if the city went into that it would have been a horrible deal for the city. So that kind of fell flat on its face. And then that made hockey become kind of more of a reality. And I think the minds of basically everybody was kind of split, or kind of not necessarily split, but there were people thinking both ways which one was going to happen. But then as hockey became more of a reality, there was a minute there, and honestly, this is going to sound wild, but it really happened. I woke up in the middle of the night. It was about 3 or 4 in the morning, and I thought to myself, man, if I'm not involved in this in some form or fashion, I'm going to be really upset with myself. Like, if we get this hockey team and I'm not really all in on this, something's wrong with me, because I'm a huge sports fan. I love Vegas. I got to do something here. So I went to work the next day, and I worked at a radio station, and my buddy who works with me, which is still the guy on the site, Jason, we were like, what if we start a website? And honestly, the whole plan of the entire thing was an attempt to get press passes for the first year. That's all we wanted to do. We thought maybe if we start the site now, if they're going to play in 2017, maybe we can get a pair of press passes, and he and I can sit next to each other and do our own thing at every single game throughout the whole year. And that was the genesis of the site.
And I assume you're there now, is that right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so, that was it, middle of the night you started writing this, or do you start it during the day? What was, I guess it was August 26th. I'm looking at the post right now. It was short and sweet, and just an introduction. What was that like? I mean, some excitement there between you and Jason?
Well, I don't necessarily know that it was excitement. We had no idea what we were getting into. I mean, I'd run some websites, blogs, similar type of things, but nothing that I created from the ground, nothing that followed a team that didn't exist and may never exist. And for me, in a sphere that I had never really been in. I watch hockey, I enjoy hockey, and I always had, but I never had a team, and I never really, it's a different game when you have something on the line every single night, and you know the stories of teams. I never had that. I just had the story of the playoffs usually in the cup, and I always enjoyed it, but never really had it. So I didn't really know what we were getting into, but it took us about 2 weeks or so. We came up with the name, which is kind of a combination of Sin City and the penalty box. I'm sure Canadians figured that one out a little bit quicker than Americans figured that one out. But
you bet, yeah.
Yeah, but that's where that came from. We went through the whole process. I thought it would be cool to go with a .Vegas rather than a .com, just because I don't think it matters anymore personally. Like, I think that everybody clicks through on Twitter, Facebook, they hear a podcast, whatever. It doesn't really make a difference. Plus, I thought Sinbin.Vegas, it's kind of unique. And so we went through that process and we bought that, and then we signed up for WordPress, and we went through the whole process, and it was a good time. It was fun, but it was a challenge because there was nothing to write about. Like nothing was going on. We were just digging for absolutely anybody saying the word Vegas that had anything to do with hockey, and we did that for like 18 months.
Now, you said, I mean, you had some hockey knowledge prior.
Yeah, I mean, I of course, I know the players. I play the video game and have for the past like 10 years, so that goes a long way, and knowing the game and players and who, all that. But there's no question that it's a different animal when you actually follow a team and you actually follow the arc of a season and all that. I never really did. I grew up in Chicago, and at the time they were not hockey fans when I was there. So it wasn't really a thing in my house. And in growing up, I never played. I'll tell you about my bet about skating at some point here, but, because I don't know how, but I'm seemingly going to have to learn. But yeah, so I'm not like a newbie to hockey. Like, I know the game, I know what's going on. I know the players, I know the league, like I know a lot of the history, but I didn't have the same rooted interest that I think makes you a fanatic that I now without question have.
Now, was there a point at which when you started this, that you thought this is not going to happen? I mean, I've read, sort of the first month of your site, and there was obviously the one that stuck out at me was Nate Silver, basically saying, why NHL? Why are you or even considering putting a team in Vegas? Was there a point at which you were kind of thinking, I'm wasting my time at this?
I wouldn't say I was ever thought I was wasting my time, and mainly because it all happened so fast in regards to, like, after the site started, we kind of went out of our way to kind of push to see if we can meet somebody with the team and introduce ourselves, and that kind of from emails to phone calls to lunches to I met Foley and had lunch with Foley within about a month and a half. So it's like, it was at that point you're already like, okay, I spend, I don't know, an hour and a half a day thinking of ideas and then writing something, and then, building the Twitter's fun. Like a lot of it was just all that went into it. It was fun, and that's probably stupid because if I had to do it again, I'd probably not want to do it again. But there's a lot of trial and error. There's a lot of things that go right. There's a lot of things that go wrong. And it's like, I don't know, the process of doing it was actually a lot of cool stuff came out of it. And the whole thing, there was a moment there where honestly I was scared of the game starting. And it's weird because now I think of it, I'm like, man, there's a week and I'm like, I don't know what to write any day. Like, how did I do this for 18 months? But there was definitely that moment where I'm like, okay, so this changes. Like, we went from ridiculously unique in there's no team, there's no players, there's nothing, to we're one of 31 doing what else everyone else does. And I wanted to stay different. And so that's why I ask players about Krispy Kreme donuts or these Star Wars characters or whatever, because I still want to stay different. Like, as fun as the game is and as good as they are, there still has to be that level of these people are just different and weird, and we're going to keep doing that forever.
Yeah, you know what? I tweeted out after the last game that Edmonton was in Vegas, and I said something along the lines of, the league is just better having Vegas as a team. And my thinking on it was not, here's this great team that's come in and they're doing really well their first year. And, I wasn't thinking about, how well they were run, but really sort of the atmosphere around the team, like everything from, everybody around the league knows the Vegas Twitter, right? and not just the Vegas Twitter, but your site, Sinbin.Vegas, which is why I reached out to you. Like, people know that there's this culture growing up around this team that's, a lot of fun. And I think that's great. That's something that this league has desperately needed. And while Vegas might not be your traditional hockey market, it certainly, is a great market to be in, just for any number of reasons. But really, the culture around the team and what you're doing and what the rest of everybody else is doing is just so welcome right now.
I think it added something that I don't know any sports league has ever had, in that everyone identifies with Vegas in some way. Like, almost everyone's either been here or specifically not come here because they're afraid to come here or whatever. There's always this stigma with Vegas that it's like, I either love Vegas or I don't want anything to do with Vegas, which it creates this atmosphere of, there's immediately a feeling towards the team where when Nashville got a team, most people were like, what state is that again? That's in Kentucky, right? And then you're like, no, it's Tennessee. That's right. Like, Vegas is a worldwide name. Like, there's nobody who's never heard of it. There's nobody who doesn't know what it is. Now, granted, it took some time for people to explain that we don't live in casinos, that there are grocery stores, that the players are not going to live at the Mandalay Bay or whatever. Like, it took some time for that, and it took some time for people to realize that this is a legit community, and surprisingly to most, a very, very tight community. So I just thought that it also created an atmosphere of, it was welcome. Like, when Winnipeg came in, there weren't a lot of people from, I don't know, say Tampa Bay saying, oh man, I'm pumped. I'm going to go to Winnipeg because Winnipeg has a team now, and I'm going to go see the Lightning play in Winnipeg. That didn't happen. Or Atlanta or Columbus or Minnesota, anybody. Vegas was different. The second Vegas got a team, everybody went from, oh, this is stupid, they shouldn't have a team, they should give it to Quebec City, to let me go because that's going to be awesome. Like, I'm going to go get to see my team play in Vegas. It's a really welcoming atmosphere because it's a very welcoming city until we take all your money and beat your hockey team.
And, here's the thing, though, and this, I was kind of curious in thinking about this because when Bill Foley, even before he had a team, he sold 13,000 seats, right?
Yeah.
What, are those folks now, are they selling them as teams come in? How's that working out? Like,
yeah, a little bit. I mean, I think there were a lot of people, specifically the people who jumped in real early. So I'd say maybe the first 6,000 to 8,000, they sold about 6,000 to 8,000 in the first week or so. And part of that, we still, a lot of people still give Vegas a hard time because, I think it was Winnipeg, they sold out in 8 minutes or something. Where it's it took you a week to get 6,000. Well, it wasn't that easy to buy them. Most people didn't even know how to buy them. I'll take some. And they're like, do I fill out a form? There was actually a paper form at the beginning, and then they figured out the online thing. But then there was you literally just typed your credit card into a Google Doc. It was something. But so those people, I think, definitely they were in. They're going to 30, 40 games. And then there were, of course, the people that looked at it and said, there's probably going to be some value in these tickets. When you really think about it, yeah, people from Edmonton are totally going to come down and watch these games. So there was some of that. But now it's weird because it's hard to justify not selling some of these tickets. So, for instance, last night, Chicago's in town, and you got a ticket. Let's say you're in the upper bowl, you're along the blue line towards the top. Your ticket's $45, $50, $60, somewhere in that range. And you go on the secondary market, and the seats are going for $280.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I kind of need to take this one in because we got a team who's playing well. There are some games that are worth only $30 over. Let me take this one, better time to the next game, and bank some money so that when the playoffs come around, I can go to those games and actually have it. So yes, lots of people sell their tickets, but I don't think it's a thing where people are just saying, "Oh, I'm going to use this as an investment. Let me get the money." I think it's people realized to get tickets, they're going to have to buy the whole season. And if you're smart, you realize buying the whole season means I can sell a portion of them and make my money back, and I can go to a bunch of games for less than I would have going to individual games and buying individual games.
Now, you, I assume, after having met Bill Foley in that first month, you probably had press passes right from day one. Is that right?
So like there weren't, when we started the website, there were 3 employees. There was Bill, there was Murray Craven, which is not really an employee at the time. He was just Bill's neighbor in Montana, who just so happened to be a very good hockey player and a ridiculously smart and nice guy. And then there was Todd Pollock, who was hired to run the ticket drive. So there weren't events, there weren't things going on, there was nothing really happening. Then the first real thing that happened, because everything was off the books, because they couldn't do anything, because the league told them, you don't have a team yet, so don't plan anything because you don't have a team. We will tell you when you have a team. So nothing happened. Then the NHL comes around and we didn't get press passes to that because the NHL was like, who are these guys? And they're not, again, what's Foley going to do? Speak up on my behalf? He's like, can you give us a team first? So we wound up at a bar and we were all partying. So we found our own thing. But once the team started happening, they hired George McPhee. We were there for the press conference on that one. So yeah, I mean, we've certainly had press passes, but I mean, I also can tell you about 14 events that I went to that the normal press people would say, like, why in the heck would I be going to this? Like, we went to everything.
Yeah.
If they announced a dealership, like a car dealership, we would go. If they announced anything, we would go. Like, they just had a donut unveil. We went. we go to everything. So they definitely respect that we're always there for no matter what they're deciding to do.
So did you have any advanced knowledge prior to the award of the team? Did you have any advanced knowledge?
It's hard to say because, like, I knew everyone in and around the team, and the organization grew to about 7 before they had the team. So I was getting texts and phone calls and different things of, hey, here's what the vote was, here's what the plan is. But the problem was they weren't always getting all the information. They were only getting a very rosy side of the information. They were told, it's looking great, keep your head up, it's looking good. And so I was getting that information disseminated to me. There was a person who's no longer with the organization that knows that I've been in Vegas for a little while and knows I'm into sports gambling. And he sent a serious request of how do you gamble on, are they going to get the team or not? Asking if he could lay like a ridiculous amount of money on it. So he was pretty certain. So like we knew, we knew it was happening. Yeah. We planned a party. We bought a ton of shirts. Like we were pretty well aware. It would have come as a huge shock if it didn't happen. But to say, like, I had an email from Bettman that said, yeah, the team's happening. No, I didn't have anything that concrete. I just had pretty strong evidence that, like, it was going to happen.
Yeah. I was just picturing the bulky household when you got the news, but obviously it was kind of more of a process than a single sort of instance in time.
So here's a funny story about that. I had to go to work, like real work at the time, which I recently quit, but I had to go to real work that day at 4 a.m. because I normally at the time worked from about noon, but the event was going to be at 11 or so, and then we were going to have our party at like 2 or 3. So I had to go to work at 4 a.m. Well, when I went to work, I brought in some like oatmeal cereal or something, and I got horribly food sick, like food poisoned.
Oh.
So I was like awful the whole day. So like my recollection of that day is like the sickest I've been in my life. But But then we had the party, and like I almost threw up on the guy from Channel 3. He was interviewing me, and he asked me which goalie I thought would make sense. And when I went to say Bishop, I almost threw up on him. So yeah, the bulky household was very green faced at that time.
Yeah, no doubt.
And tired because I got up at 4 a.m. That was stupid. I should have just quit that.
So you've been there really from day one, and prior to that, you hadn't really had any, sports journalist knowledge, I would say. Is that right?
So I went to school for journalism. I went to University of Missouri, which they tell me is the best journalism school. I created my own site and now do my own thing, so I don't really know why I went to school for that. But nonetheless, that's supposed to help you get a job. That's what college is about, but that didn't happen for me. Whatever. Okay, so yes, I have a very, structured journalism background. I've worked for a couple of news stations. I've done hard news. I've done feature news. I've done sports reporting. I've done blogs. I've done all sorts of different stuff. So it's there, but never without someone overseeing it, I guess. Like, this is mine. If I screw up, it's on me.
Yeah. And I guess, where I'm going with that is what is it when, the NHL finally comes to Vegas and and at that point, you're probably, starting to pay a little bit more attention to the NHL, more so than you did before. What about the game struck you the most? I mean, you're more or less kind of you're a guy with some hockey knowledge, but not a big fan. But what about the game struck you the most exciting? I
think the stats, I started to get really into some of the advanced stats and some of the numbers. And at first I was real frustrated with them because I felt like they were coming up short because I'm used to following football, baseball, and all those where like these stats are just outrageous. And I felt like they were coming up short. But then as I started to watch games and then follow the stats with them and start to figure out, all right, what am I going to be focused on? What stats am I going to like? I started to, really get into that. But I think the number one thing that struck me is I've always thought, like forever, whenever I've watched hockey, I've always thought that a lot of it comes down to luck, that a lot of it comes down to funny bounces, nice deflections, whatever, certain things happening, because it seems like such a fast, ridiculously chaotic game that I thought a lot of it had to do with that. And the more I watched and the more I got to know players and got to know teams, and then certainly now following this team even more so. Now, granted, this team, you can argue, has a lot of luck in their favor, so maybe I'm biased in that. But it's not luck. Like, yes, certain goals are luck. There's no question. Certain things happen. But the better team wins the game more often than I thought. Like, arguably more often than a lot of other sports, which I wouldn't have thought always. I would have thought it was more of a random type of thing. But the better team wins the majority of the games, and and if they don't, there's probably a reason for it. Rather than and now, honestly, it makes me mad when I hear that. When I hear, the puck just didn't bounce the right way. You're like, well, not really. Watch the game again and let's figure out where the puck didn't bounce the right way and why the puck didn't bounce the right way and who wasn't in the right place to make the puck bounce the right way. Like, I've kind of become the snob that's like, shut up with your luck. That's not what happened. And I also get mad when people look at stats or like, 40 shots on goal. The goalie must have been amazing tonight. Like, well, not necessarily. Maybe watch it again and realize that none of them came from anywhere close, and you would have saved half of them just standing there. So yeah, I don't know. I think that's probably the thing. Is it's not as fluky and lucky as I originally had thought.
Now, do you find yourself, daily around Vegas, the parts that those of us that go out there don't get to see, where the regular Joes live and that? Do you find that you're explaining the game to a lot of people, or a lot of people walking around with Golden Knights jerseys and you're fist pumping them on the way to work or wherever?
Definitely fist bumping people on the way to work. That's for sure. The Golden Knights jersey and shirt and hat has certainly become more than just the hockey team. It's like the representation of I'm from Vegas and I enjoy being from Vegas, and they're winning, so people like that. So it's becoming kind of a bigger deal. And then of course the tragedy on October 1st, and that kind of got people connected to the team. So yeah, you're seeing it. But honestly, I thought I would be explaining the game a little bit more. And my year from June 22nd to, I guess it's about a year and a half, to October 6th, when they dropped the puck for the very first game, I spent so much time trying to become the expert on the rules and the regulations and the waivers and roster limits and all this crap, because I knew that all of it was going to come up and no one's going to have any idea about absolutely anything. And that's not the case. Like, there are the occasional things. They had a goal recently against Minnesota where the goalie was pulled and Perron hooked the guy from behind and they just awarded the goal. I'm sure you've seen that before.
You bet.
And people lost their mind because they've never seen that before. Because you can watch a lot of hockey, the puck land in the corner and then be like, nope, that's a goal. You're like, wait a minute, hang on. No, it isn't. So people freaked out about that. There was a moment where Marchessault got locked in the box because the off-ice official didn't realize what was going on. And I had to explain that this is the guy doing the wrong thing. But it hasn't been, like, I haven't had to explain like gaps and pinching and half wall and that kind of stuff as much. We've done it a little bit to the people who want to get into it more. But most of the people that follow the site and are really interested in what I do, because I'm beyond the Golden Knights Twitter, I'm like the next step into becoming a nut or a person, which you are as well. So the people that are with me know the basics, know most of the majority of the game. They just don't see some of the weird stuff that happens, and they look to me to answer the weird stuff. And honestly, those are my favorite moments of the year. I love when that crazy stuff happens because I love rules. I think I'm like the weirdest person ever on that, because everyone I tell to that, they think I'm stupid. I bought the rule book the day they got the team, and I've read it 4 times. I love the rules.
Well, I'm sure you could probably answer a few questions for me. I'm going to end the first part here, and when we get back, we will chat about the Golden Knights, where they're at today, which is right near the top of the standings. And I'd love to hear your take on where they're going and how the team's doing.
They're going to win the cup, but take your break.
Oilers Live Podcast.
And welcome back to Oilers Live Podcast. I've got Ken Bulkey from Sinbin.Vegas with me, and we're going to talk about the Golden Knights and their wonderful season they're having this year. And again, Ken and I were talking just before we went to recording. We're talking about luck and how it doesn't necessarily exist in hockey. Ken, just give me your thoughts so far. I mean, this is, we went in the first part, we talked a little bit about, your excitement around the franchise and getting that. But I want to know, I mean, is this, now we're sitting in February. Did you ever imagine this? And what's your thoughts been up until now?
I was on board saying that they are going to be one of the worst teams in the league. So let's start that. Wrong. Good call, guy that's supposed to be biased about the team. You probably could have done better than that, but that okay. So and back to my bet. I don't know how to skate, and I bet a buddy that if they get 85 points, which I thought was the most ludicrous thing ever, that I would learn how to skate. And I'm quite frankly happy I didn't put like a second qualifier, like, oh yeah, if they get $110, then I'll whatever. Like, yeah, I'm happy I didn't do that. But so at the beginning of the year, I was definitely on they're not going to be very good. After the first 9 games, when they went 8-1, I still thought okay, let me see what happens as things go on. I wasn't one that was saying like, oh, the road trip's going to end the season. They're going to be horrible. Like, it wasn't that. But I was like, okay, let me see the next month or so. When they played the Ducks in Anaheim, I actually traveled to that game. It was on November 22nd, a seminal day in my mind. That's the day I realized that this team is very, very good. And I realized not only are they going to go to the playoffs, but they have a legitimate shot to win this division, and they are a very, very good team. And from there, I will now make the argument I believe they are the best team in the NHL.
So that's and we hadn't talked about this. What is it about that particular game that really sold you on this team? So
it was a road game. It was the first time they had gone to Anaheim, and Anaheim's Anaheim this year. You know, you can make your arguments for Anaheim and what's going on with Anaheim, but they still have won the division like every year forever for the, what's it been, 5 in a row or whatever. So there was still something about that. But that game was a game in which the Golden Knights played, still to me, one of the best games they've played all year. And when the second period ended, they were losing. And I'm like, all right, well, let's see what happens. Let's see what they do. Are they going to get down? Are they going to, do the thing on the road where you struggle in certain buildings? Is that going to be what they're going to do? And it wasn't. For all year, when they play better, they win. And in that game, they were playing much better and weren't winning. And all of a sudden, they just came out, and in typical Golden Knights fashion, they just stuck it to them all in a hurry. And the Ducks walked off the ice and thought, what in the heck just happened? Who are these guys? And then I went into the Golden Knights locker room, and I started talking to the guys about the game, and it was business as usual. It was, we're better than them. We played better than them today. We should have won the game, and I don't know why it took that long. And it was just this feeling of like, man, this team is really, really good. And that was the moment that I was like, you know what? This team's for real.
And, that goes back to November. There had to be moments before that, and for me, there were moments after that where I kept thinking, when does this team fall apart? What's that like as a fan? I mean, we were asking the exact opposite question in Edmonton. When's this team going to come together and do well? But I've not had that. I've not had that thought before in terms of, just waiting for that very moment. I actually thought that first game that Edmonton and Vegas played, and the 7-2 2 game, I really kind of thought this is when the team comes down to earth, right?
Yeah.
And it was after that they came back out, and I believe they won the next game.
Yep, Vancouver.
Yeah, and they continued to do what the Knights have done all season long, which is play just really solid hockey and win games. That's when I believed in this team. But right up until when that Edmonton game happened, I thought that's it for this team. Like, they are, we're going to see them do a nosedive. They're not for real. It's been luck up until now. I'm wrong. I hate it. I love having your team in the league. I hate that they're doing so well. But yeah, what's it like being a fan and sort of expecting that, the team to sort of fall apart in those early days? What's that like? It's
kind of weird because everybody's a fan of other teams, and whether it's other hockey teams or other football, basketball, baseball, whatever. And there's an MO that every single team has. If you're a New England Patriots football fan, no matter what's going on, you say, it'll be fine. We'll be fine. They're going to probably wind up in the Super Bowl. If you're me and you're a Tampa Bay Buccaneers football fan, you say, it doesn't matter. They're going to lose. They are terrible. It will eventually fall apart. So you had a fan base where they're all drawing on what they've had before. So you have some people saying, no, this is going to continue. This is what it is. You have some people waiting for the other shoe to drop. You have some people not really sure. And then there's me sitting in the middle of it saying, you know what? Let's just see. Let's just see what this team is. And as every single time they needed to do something, every time they needed to win, every time they needed a good period, every time I could even go down to certain times where I'd say they need a good shift right here, they would do it. And their MO became, they just won't go away. They just keep doing it at the right time. And it wasn't all that hard to buy in. And then it became, then your comment, what you were saying, it almost makes us angry in a way where it's like, you're not watching the games as closely as we are. And I get that. I don't watch the Oiler games as closely as you do. And you're not going to watch the Golden Knights games as closely as I am. So when you watch the team and you watch every single game, it's not surprising that they haven't gone away. It's not surprising that it hasn't fallen apart. And really going back to that game, Dylan Ferguson played in that game.
Yeah.
So to think that was going to be the moment, and I get it, believe me, I get it. They looked terrible in that game, and they looked like they had run into a team that just was so much better than them. But it was hard to look back and look at the numbers and look at the points and look at the Corsi numbers and even scoring chance numbers and all that and think, if Marc-Andre Fleury gets back in there, when is this team going to lose hardly ever? And that's what happened. He got back in there and they don't lose all that often. So yeah, it was it was hard to believe, but I think there's a moment, and I think you can ask pretty much any Golden Knights fan, there's going to be a game or a week or a trip or whatever that they're going to say, yeah, that was the moment I realized that this team's for real. And now I'm behind them and I will tell you they're for real. Mine was November 22nd. Other people's, there was a Nashville game people are pumped about. There was a Winnipeg game people were excited about. There's a lot of different options. Tampa was a big one. So everybody's got their one game, but I think now you're going to have a hard time finding a Golden Knights fan or really anybody that's going to say like, yeah, well, it might fall apart at some time.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what, I think the interesting thing, right? I mean, we're division rivals, right? And so as I say, I kind of hate the success they're having. I'm happy for you, you being out there, and I'd rather it was my Edmonton Oilers that were at the top of the division rather than being right near the bottom. But, I can't help but look at this team and just, see the way they play, the way they come out, and the work ethic every game is unbelievable. I don't, one of the things, and I want to get your take, because you're right. I don't watch every game. I've watched maybe a total of 4 Golden Knights games. And actually probably more than that. But the ones I have watched, this is a team that is on the puck, faster and harder than any other team in the league. And yeah, I can honestly say that what I've watched, they are, with the exception of that one game against Edmonton, they have been the best team in the league. And it's not hard to say that. Right. Tampa Bay and Vegas, I think, are definitely neck and neck, and they play a completely different game. What do you think is the reason? And where I'm going with this is, one of the things people say is these are the castaways. Right? Everybody's got something to prove. Is that really it? Or is it Gallant? Or what's the reason? You get to meet these guys and talk to these guys. What's going through their head? Obviously, you said, they just expect to win. That's a confidence thing. That's great. But what are some of the other factors playing into that?
I think the castaways thing is overblown a little bit. I mean, every single player in the NHL wants to be the best that they can, no matter what. Like, that's obvious. You don't need the extra chip on your shoulder. You don't need whatever this extra stuff is that people are going to say. I think a lot more of it has to do with basically every single player has been placed in a better opportunity than what they were previously. William Karlsson may have scored 30 goals for the Columbus Blue Jackets. They never gave him a chance to do it. Jonathan Marchessault did score 30 goals for Florida. they didn't give him the chance to keep doing it. Nate Schmidt, Lucas Spiza, I can go down the list, Shea Theodore, Colin Miller, like they were never given that opportunity to do it. So a lot of it has to do with just being in the right place. But then I think one of the biggest things, and Gallant deserves a huge amount of credit in this, is that they are unlike any other team in regards to how the locker room is built and how the hierarchy of the organization is. There is not a leader. There is not a clique. There is not a, this guy needs to be better. Like, there's none of that. They fully expect every single guy to come out and be there in case somebody else isn't.
Yeah, you know what? I've never put that together until now. But you're right. I mean, this is a team. This is a team, right? You can maybe say that better than anybody else.
They're even more than that. They're even like, yes, there are better players. Yes, there are more important players. Yes, Flower is on a different level than every single other guy. Like, that exists. But there's no history of this guy falls apart at this moment. This thing happens at this. It's not there. They're all learning. And since they've all been winning, they all expect it to stay good. Like, they don't ever expect it to go away, because why would you think that? You've had all this time. So, like, there isn't that looking towards the next guy to help. It's like, let me just do my thing and I'll keep doing my thing, and everybody does their thing and we'll be fine and we'll keep doing great. So it is a team, but it's also a collection of guys that all want to stake their claim in that team and be someone on that team and be someone in this league.
And we've had a chance in Edmonton to watch David Perron. Of course, he was playing for Edmonton. We've seen Brad Hunt. We've seen these players play in our conference. Are they? Yeah. I like Hunt, and David Perron is can get under your skin, and when he's on your team, that's great, and when he's not, you're gonna kind of have to hate him. When the Oilers play tomorrow night, I mean, who's the guy on this team that you think now, after you've seen them so far this season, is gets the least amount of credit that really Oilers fans and hockey fans should be watching tomorrow night?
Perron is probably at the top of that list. He has a skill that I don't think anyone else on the team has, and that's when he gets the puck, it is very, very difficult to get it off of him. He doesn't require transition or help getting the puck into the zone or keeping the puck in the zone, or he doesn't need assistance doing whatever. He just gets it done when he gets in the offensive zone, and he's become a lot more reliable defensively. At the beginning of the year, he was in many ways almost a liability. He just didn't seem like he wanted to back check ever. Now he's doing much better at that, and I think that's because he's on a team where it's demanded of him. So I think he's probably one. The other one I would look at is Colin Miller. Colin Miller's a guy that has always kind of just been your classic stand on the point and rip shots through and just, pray to the heavens that one of them goes in. He has turned himself into a really, really solid defensive player who is willing to go into the tough areas, willing to mix it up with guys when he needs to, not fight, but, hit guys where he needs to. He makes really good decisions in his own zone, and he creates a lot of the offense that the Golden Knights create. And I don't think most people notice it. And is he going to score? Yes, from time to time. He's very important on the power play. He's really come a long way. And I think it's a guy that if you're Boston, you got to look back and think, what in the heck were we thinking about this?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of those, but like he's one that he's like the prototypical 2017, 2018 NHL defenseman, and they let him walk for nothing.
Yeah, and he's 25, right? He's just entering his prime years. Yeah. What who's some of the guys? I mean, now you're into February. There's got to be fans out there on Twitter and wherever, and they're saying, Gallant, like, why are you putting this guy out there, right? Or why are you putting him in that situation? Who are those guys right now that are kind of public enemy number one?
That's I unfortunately create some of public enemies number one, but and it's really it's so hard because like they've already engraved his name on the Jack Adams trophy. So like, it's so hard to make arguments against him. Cause like, come on, the guy's done one of the best coaching jobs I think anyone's ever done in this league. So it is tough, but I think the answer to that question is Brendan Leipsic. And the problem with Brendan Leipsic is he doesn't score. He puts himself in so many great opportunities and he just cannot finish the chances. And people cannot stand that when they're in the building or they're watching on TV. It's like, how many times does Brendan Leipsic have to have these chances? And he never scores. And they get so mad and frustrated, and then I have to talk them off the ledge and like, guys, you realize it's not that easy to get into that chance and get into that spot. And that's why I've kind of pushed some of it off to Oscar Lindbergh, who's a guy who plays all over the place. He's played all three forward positions on a bundle of different lines, but he's just not a fit for what the Golden Knights do. He would be a better cycle, good hands in tight, getting the tough areas. I think he'd actually be pretty good setting up behind the goal at times. And that's just not what the Golden Knights do. The Golden Knights are a transition team. They like up tempo. They don't dump the puck in unless they absolutely have to. They don't even like to spend all that much time in the zone. They want to get it in and start taking shots and making things happen. That's not what Oscar Lindbergh does. I just don't think he's really necessarily a fit for the team. And I don't think he's good enough as a penalty killer to really fit. So I think if there's one guy, it's probably him.
Now, is it either Lindbergh or Leipsic that usually get called into the lineup? Like, do they interchange? Or I notice, when I look down the depth chart, they've got Leipsic down as an extra skater right now, and Lindbergh slotted in the third line. Who are we going to see tomorrow night?
Tomorrow, you probably will see Leipsic out, and Lindbergh will play. Paula was a late scratch in the last game, so Aaron Lindbergh actually moved up to the line with Perron and Neal. So again, they kind of use these guys interchangeably. There's a couple injuries on the back end, like the fourth line. Carrier was hurt. Noshik was hurt. Carpenter's still kind of new in a way. He kind of came in a little bit later, and he's starting to kind of find his way. I think they're going to start to utilize those guys as healthy scratches a little bit more, but they don't have a lot of forwards. They're still heavy defensively, and they have to play some of these guys. And so, I think Lindbergh's still going to find his way into the lineup for a majority of the time. But again, it's like, do you want Lindbergh, who's a little bit more cautious and careful and doesn't really score all that often because he's never in a chance to score, he's never in a spot to score? Or do you want Leipsic, who puts himself in the spot to score over and over and over and over again and just can't do it? Like, I don't know which one's better.
Well, considering that I'm the guy, when I play hockey, I'm the guy that's in the right spot and never scores, I'd pick Leipsic.
Yeah, it's just, I would probably agree with you. And I also think he's a young guy, and maybe it will just click at some point. Maybe things will just come into play or whatever. But then again, if you put Lindbergh in the spots that Leipzig's in, he's got 15 goals because he can score. He's got great hands, but he doesn't get there. So I don't know. It's a mess. Give me somebody new.
So when you have a team which you early on didn't expect to do as well as they're doing, and nobody did, and so that's not unique. What do you do? You're now in this. You're at Sinbin.Vegas. You've done what you sort of set out to accomplish, and then all of a sudden there's this success, and you're in there. You're talking to players. now you're, a sports journalist, right? What are you doing? How are you following the prospects? Are you following the prospects when you're on you have a team that's doing as well as you're doing?
We are definitely not following them. We're going to. That's for certain. I thought I was going to be all over the Brandstrom numbers in Sweden and Glass and Suzuki and figuring all this out. But now it's becoming pretty clear that they're going to the playoffs, and we got to start worrying more about the high-end AHL guys and wonder, is Tomas Hika going to make a difference? Is Brendan Peary going to make a difference? Is Teemu Pulkkinen still there? I don't know what's going on. You got to figure out that stuff. I still think the prospects are very, very important, because how many teams, and I don't know the answer to this because I never really felt like going back through every single draft. How many teams have ever had 3 picks in the first 15?
Oh, not many. I mean, I looked back at that just in advance of this, and
it's got to be less than 5.
Yeah, it guaranteed it's less than 5. In fact, I don't know if there has been one.
So it may be the first ever. So that, when you look at where the team is now, and then you consider the fact that they picked 3 players in the top 15, you have to continue to be excited about the future. Like, it's hard to not keep focusing on that. So yeah, I do spend quite a bit of time, figuring out what's going to happen with Glass and Suzuki, and when are their seasons hopefully going to end, and maybe they can get their cup of coffee in the back end of this season. And, I have this grandiose dream of, like, the Pacific Division is clinched in like a week and a half, and then the Western Conference will figure that out at the back end. No worries on there. And then maybe Glass or Suzuki can get some games, and we'll make that decision, and maybe that's the fill-in. Who knows? Or Hika comes up, or whatever. That's my theory. But to answer the question, yes, we still follow the prospects pretty closely, because there's only so much hockey that you watch at the major league level. But it's not as big a deal, because they're not as important anymore in the context of what this is. Like I said, I honestly believe they can win it all this year without their 3 first round picks.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? That is, in itself is unique to any team. I mean, most teams will take that first rounder, or, the prior season, which, you don't have that benefit in Vegas, but most teams will have the prior season or that season, the first rounder that's playing. I think we're closing in on the trade deadline. What do you see McPhee doing as we approach the deadline, if anything? I mean, and would you do anything?
I think he will do what I would do, which is just stand pat and come out in the podium afterwards and say, the deadline is passed. The roster limit is now gone. We're going to eventually bring up some of the guys we have in the AHL. We're going to possibly see if we have anybody who is going to fit. We're going to keep our eyes on signing extra players, and we're going to see if we can't sneak a guy through and figure that out and upgrade from within, which is usually a slogan that I can't stand. But with this team, you just can't risk it. Like, the idea of selling to me is just ridiculous. Mainly because I don't know how you sleep at night if you make a move, any move, buy or sell. Sell would be worse. But even if you buy and you bring in, let's say, a Mike Green, and Mike Green bounces Colin Miller out of the lineup for a minute, bounces Brad Hunt out of the lineup for a minute, whatever happens, if you don't win the whole thing, you're going to look back and say, why did we do that? Maybe we shouldn't have done that. Even worse so, if you sell and you come up 1 goal short, how do you look yourself in the mirror ever? Like, you can't do it. This team's such an unknown. There's no book on what they're going to do in the playoffs, what they're going to do moving forward, what they're going to do in the future. There's no book on them. Like when McPhee was the general manager of the Capitals, he knew if we stand pat, we're going to flame out and we're going to lose to the Penguins. So different. We got to find a different way. We got to do something else, because if we stand pat, it's not going to work. With this team, you don't know that. So if you make a change, you're writing history that shouldn't be written.
And so you don't see them doing anything at the deadline that really would be big news.
I think the only thing you could possibly see would be they may, find a player that it would be effectively your third line winger who has some ability to score, a guy that you're like, who is this guy? Most people won't even know who he is. I could see them going down that road. Just a very small name. Like when they claim Ryan Carpenter off waivers. Did anyone care?
Yeah.
Like now he scored 3 goals in the last 4 games. So, it can happen. You can find that guy, but I don't think it'll be anything significant. And one thing I'll say this, I could see them doing what Pittsburgh did last year. They went out and got Ron Hainsey, and that was like the veteran presence type thing and a little grit and that kind of stuff. I would not go down that road. I would not add something that is supposed to be a locker room assistance and like a playoff assistance because you're telling your team you need this. I would sit back and say, you got it. Like you guys have it. You guys know you have it. Go out and do it.
Well, this is this is a team of veterans, right? I mean, they're not you're middle of the road when it comes to age in the league.
Yep.
It's not the youngest team by a stretch. I think that's that's not necessary in this case. I mean, the talk would have been Neil, and I think that was sort of prior to the season even starting, right?
Yep. Neil Perron, Visa. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I guess so that leads into the next bit, which is where do you see this team going? At the end of this season, when it's time to start signing some of these players. Have you heard anything so far? Or contract talks started with some of the soon-to-be UFAs?
I think they certainly have to. You have to know where they're going to be. I think a lot of it has to do with how this season ends. If they go into the playoffs and they lose in the first round and it becomes clear that, good regular season team, not built for the playoffs at this time, then James Neal, David Perron, Lucas Pisa, they don't necessarily become as important. While if they go to the Western Conference Finals and are 1 goal short or whatever, or win the Stanley Cup, then you're looking at a James Neal differently. You're looking at a David Perron differently. You're saying maybe we can do it again, or maybe we just need that extra little step. We need that extra little piece to make this happen. So I think they are certainly looking at what they're going to do moving forward. I would be surprised if any of them get signed before the deadline. And my honest guess is Perron stays for like a 2 to 3 year deal somewhere in there, underpaid. Everyone's going to be like, why? Why would David Perron take that amount? Because he finally feels like it's a place that he can stay and he wants to stay. So I think he's going to stay. I don't know what they're going to do with Spiza. Neil is the one that I think it's completely up to what happens in the playoffs.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. I mean, that's what happens in the playoffs will mean so much to this team going forward. The benefit being, of course, is, as we talked about, there's picks that are still to be done. And Vegas has a ton of picks over the next 3 years. And of course, your prospects in Glass and Suzuki and some of these players, the one that's out, Brandstrom. What is it? Brandstrom? Yeah. See these kids, whether or not they come up and make a big difference next year in training camp. One of the things that, I'm kind of curious about, what do you think it's going to be like in Vegas, when the playoffs start? I mean, it is, it's a given now. Vegas is going to the playoffs. What's Vegas going to be like when that happens?
Just another level from what it is right now. I mean, right now, I think a lot of the atmosphere of the building and in the city is, I guess the city's a little different. I'll start with the building. A lot of the atmosphere in the building is simply
there's a group of fans that are here watching the other team, and some nights it's 50%, some nights it's 30%, some nights it's as low as like 10. But there's always fans in the building from the other team, and what it does is it creates this atmosphere of the game just means a little bit more, because there's nothing worse than watching the opposing fans cheer in your own building, especially when you want the game as a fan, which Golden Knights fans now want every single game because they think their team is good. So when the playoffs come around, it'll just be amped up to the next level. If, it'll just go a little bit higher. There will still be 20, 30% of the other team in the building. So it's still going to have that same feel. It's just going to go to another level. I think in the city right now, it's still like a euphoric state. I think there's still people that are like, wow, this is so cool. We have a team and they're good and this is fun and I can't wait till the next game and I'm going to talk about it and figure it out and whatever. When the playoffs roll around, I think people are going to be just become fanatical. Like, it's going to become everything for this city, and it's, especially if they win a round or two, then it'll just go absolutely wild, and I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, have you been in with the fans to watch a game, or has it just been press box?
At home, I have sat in the press box every single game. But we are open air, so we're in the stadium. We're not behind glass. We're not up really out in a different place. Like it's pretty. You get the atmosphere. Like I don't think it would be too much different. I think obviously being in the crowd, it would be a little bit different because you learn about the fans right around you. But I think you get a better sense in the press box. I have been to a few. I went to Washington D.C. for a game, and I sat in the obnoxious guy screaming when the Golden Knights would do anything.
Yeah. And you've been, how many rinks have you been to now?
This season I've gone to 5. Dallas, opening night, Anaheim, LA, Washington, and Vegas. And previously I'd been to Scott Trade Center and I've been to the United Center.
Yeah. And outside of Vegas, what's your favorite one out of all of those?
Staples.
Yeah. Okay. One. Do you have time? I want to take one more break. But before we do that, I want to ask you because one of the things I'm curious about. I used to. One of my roommates actually used to write. Be one of the reporters for the Flames, and she'd travel with them and come back. In fact, I'd answer the home phone. And Jerome McGinley would give a call every now and again to respond to her or something. So that was, exciting for me as a fan. But she'd tell me stories about the players all the time. And what I'm curious about is, who on the team is your guy, like the guy that you can get sort of the best quotes from, the most honest guy. Who's that guy with Vegas?
There's a couple of them. So there's different levels of it. My favorite guy to talk to, just because he's the nicest human being I've ever met, is Brad Hunt. Like, I refuse to go in the locker room or go anywhere without going to say hi to Brad or talk to Brad or whatever. Like, I have to go talk to Hunt at some point because he's the best. And that's just because he's such a nice guy. That being said, if you want to quote, stay as far away from Brad Hunt as physically possible, because he's just the eternal optimist and the eternal cliche machine, because he honestly believes it. Like, they're not cliches to him. He believes it. He just thinks, like, this is awesome. They pay me to play hockey. I'm here. My teammates are awesome. This is great. So that's Brad Hunt. So he's on a different, he's different.
Yeah.
The other guys, like Nate Schmidt, is just a different animal. Like, Nate Schmidt is just special in the way that he's just awesome and just, he's Nate Schmidt. Like, watch any Nate Schmidt video and you'll understand that he's Nate. So that's always fun. Fleury has his flurry. He has a way to say things that you're like, yes, I like you, and I want to continue liking you. So he's always fun to talk to. But again, and I go back to it, the best guy is Perron. Perron is obsessed with advanced stats. Perron is obsessed with hockey. Perron is obsessed with other hockey teams. Like, he's awesome, and he's willing to tell you if he thinks a penalty is wrong, if he thinks a tactic is wrong, whatever, he's willing to tell you. So when you really want good quotes, it's Perron, Marcia because I don't think he's fully fluent in English, so he tends to say things that he shouldn't, which is always fun. And then there's Tuck, who is just too young to realize that you can't say the wrong thing. So every once in a while, he'll say good stuff that's like, oh, wow, he shouldn't be saying that, but that was kind of awesome that he did.
Awesome. All right. Well, it leads me to one more thing, I guess, before we go to break, because I'm interested in Perron now. What did you have a chance to talk to him after the 2 Edmonton games? And if you did, what brings it back to memory? If you didn't, we'll take a break and then come back.
I was not in Edmonton the first time, so I definitely did not talk to him after that one. I'm trying to think after this most recent one. I know that was a game that they were not happy about at all, but nothing's jumping out at me that Perron necessarily said. So I don't think I have a good answer for you.
All right, no problem.
Other than that, they were just mad.
Yeah.
They were so mad that game.
Well, let's talk about that when we get back. All right, we'll take a break. I want to thank you for listening to episode 14 of the Oilers Live podcast. I just want to say, in segment 3 that Ken and I, we had a good chat. We talked a little bit about the resources that he uses in order to get information about the game and where he goes. Of course, he does tune into Hockey Central a little bit. He tries not to get any biased information. I thought was very cool. So he goes down whatever rabbit hole he wants to go down with this team and report on what he thinks is actually happening, and just be surprised when rumors come up. Natural Stat Trick was one that he also said, and Corsica were a couple of them. I asked him what he does or what he'd suggest people do when they're in Vegas for a game, and I said outside of the obvious, which is at the Strip, and it was great. He said go down to Summerlin. Take an Uber down there. It's about 15 to 20 minute drive, it sounds like. You go about 75 miles per hour all the way there, and you can watch their practices, which are 10:30 game day. And he said there's about, can be up to 500-600 people there. There's some nice restaurants, and there's a mall right by there, and a casino, I think, called the Red Rock right by there. So it was... that was really good information and just something that you can do sort of outside of the usual Las Vegas festivities while you're there. I also thanked Ken for just being a part of the episode tonight, and what a wonderful job he's doing with Sinbin.Vegas. I gave him an opportunity to tell us about Sinbin.Vegas and what they're doing that's really different. This guy is a fan, and we're lucky to have folks like this in the league and doing podcasts and doing blogs, and he's got his press passes, but they're running fan viewing parties for away games. They're just doing a lot of wonderful things. They've got some shirts on Sinbin.Vegas, lots of great things, and Ken and I had chatted about him coming back on before the next game. He was just a wonderful guest to have, and I look forward to it. His commentary around the game in only 2 years is fantastic. As he said earlier, he's read the whole rule book, and he's really just tied in. He's got a chance to go to everything that is Golden Knights hockey. And while as Oiler fans, it's troublesome to see the Golden Knights ahead of us in the standings. It's certainly great to have them in the league, a place that's easy to get to and watch a game. I just think this whole league is better having them in there, and they're fun to watch and fun to play against. I'm hoping, as always, for an Oilers win tomorrow night. I've got my own thoughts on the game. Stay tuned, because we will have a draft or not draft, trade deadline day episode, where hopefully we get Beer League hero Kelly and the Oil Knight Sean, and we'll kind of a follow-up to our prospects episode that we did last week, and just have a little draft deadline day, or I keep saying draft, trade deadline day, and have those guys on and chat about what all the moves that have taken place. And if Ken is right, the Vegas Golden Knights will stay the same. Anyway, let's hope the Oilers win tomorrow. I'd like to see them close out the year strong. Sekera is back on IR. If you didn't hear it already, you heard it here first. All right. Have a great day, night, whatever you're doing. If you're at the Golden Knights game, have a lot of fun. Make sure you go down to Summerlin and check out the practice tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. if it's not already past that time. And to all the Twitter folks and all the Oilers fans out there, thanks again for listening. This has been so much fun to do, and I've met so many great people already. Have a great one. Bye.